Welcome to Ink Thinks. If you have been anywhere on the internet in 2020, then you will have heard of Among Us. What started as an indie game with less than 50 active players has grown into an international phenomena that's joined by millions of people around the world. Now, naturally with Among Us being at the center of everyone's attention, I've been getting more and more requests to see Among Us, or its sister series Henry Stickmin, which I'm going to talk about in the future, come to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as a playable fighter. Well, today I'm going to take each of those requests seriously and analyze the chances that Among Us has of being in Smash, as well as discussing the potential impact that its inclusion may have on the scene. I'm going to break down every single argument, both for and against an imposter from Among Us making it into Smash to determine its final chances of getting into the game. Let's get into it. Now, I typically start out these final analysis videos with a history of the franchise, because I think that it usually works as a useful canvas on which to paint the remainder of our arguments. But with Among Us, there really isn't much to talk about because the game is so new. The game came out in 2017, but was relatively unknown until July 2020, when it exploded largely due to the advent of streamers discovering the game and making it an experience that's fun to watch. The game was developed by a small studio of 3 developers who called themselves Innersloth, a name that came directly from a random name generator according to the developers. Not only was the game created by only 3 people, but these people were just barely out of college, being graduated around 5 years before the game was released. The game itself was inspired by the popular party game Mafia, also called Werewolf by some people who are wrong. Mafia is incredibly similar in the sense that there's a group of innocent people, and within that group is a mafia who's trying to off each of the town members. Each day within the game, the town votes to determine who to lynch in an effort to exterminate the mafia. One of my favorite things actually is watching Melee players play Mafia at Treehouse. I just think it's a ton of fun. But anyway, this game is a ton of fun, and also a game that I'm innately awful at due to the fact that I'm widely considered untrustworthy in games like this by my friends and family because I'm usually very vocal and good at lying. But it could also be my strategy of immediately making a hard read and accusing someone of being the mafia immediately as the game begins before the first night even starts, in an effort to get a quick win. I'm usually murdered by the mafia night 1 or lynched to the next morning. It's kinda depressing. Anyway, a few other game developers have attempted to recreate the Mafia experience at different points throughout gaming history. 2 of the most notable being Town of Salem, which is a ton of fun, or the Mafia franchise, which I think may have missed the point entirely. But anyway, Town of Salem and other similar games like The Werewolf Within or Secret Hitler were all loved by a niche audience of fans, and even played by similarly large streamers, but none of them really caught on in the same way that Among Us did. Mafia the party game showed that the concept was good, it was just the implementation that wasn't quite there. What Among Us did differently is rework the entire concept of Mafia into something that wasn't reliant on specific roles that lent themselves better to in-person play, but rather it focused on fast-paced strategy and deception. They honored the original game in spirit, but not in mechanics, which I think was one of the best choices that the devs made. In June 2018, the first trailer for the game was released, and after perfecting the coding, animation, and different elements that allowed for strategy, the game was released. And it was a complete flop. Within the first few months of its life, the highest amount of active player base it ever achieved was 13, sometimes dipping as low as 5. But the game still gained a very small following, which was the only thing that kept the developers from quitting. But after multiple reworks, stages, and a Steam release, the developers didn't see the success they were hoping for. A few months after the game came to Steam, it only had around 2 people playing at one time, which isn't even enough to play a single game. In mid-2019, the game was picked up by a few Korean and Brazilian streamers who helped boost the success of the game to a moderate level. Within just 3 months after these streamers picked it up, the game went from an average of 8 players to an average of 225, which is a considerable improvement. Now, real fast, I want to make a point to talk about this level of the player base, because literally every time I make a comment like Among Us is only newly popular, some Polar Express looking kids come along and say, actually the game was really popular in Asian countries before it came to the States, so actually it's been popular for a long time. But no, look at these numbers compared to what I'm about to show you later on. The game doesn't even compare to what it is now. And this spike in popularity didn't even stick around, as you can see in just a few months after that 225 spike in active player base, it shrunk down to around 80. Anyway, moving on. When 2020 rolled around, the game began to find more and more traction as a few other streamers online picked up the game, and as the coronavirus caused more and more people to stay inside. It continued to grow in popularity at a decent rate until July 2020 when Fortnite, Minecraft, Fall Guys, League. The 4 online games lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when a new game threatened the scene. Only true gamers could master all 4 games, but when the world needed them most, they vanished. As months passed, Sodapoppin and PewDiePie discovered a new online game called Among Us. And although its gameplay is great, it's gotta make a lot of growth before it's ready to join Smash. But I believe, yeah, no, it's probably not joining Smash. The game was picked up by the popular streamer Sodapoppin, and then the success of that stream brought more and more streamers and YouTubers into the game, until it reached over 220,000. I'm so sorry. Until it reached over 425,000 active players. And the most recent numbers that I can find are even crazier. The most current numbers I was able to find were from the end of September, where Among Us had reached 100 million downloads and over 60 million daily players, and a peak of 3.8 million concurrent players across platforms. It overtook the super popular game Fall Guys in just a few months. It's probably worth noting that these numbers are on their way down according to Steam charts, but it's really difficult to know for sure. It's an explosive growth that's almost certainly over, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Now, this growth started around July 2020, which, according to a few past statements from Sakurai and some speculation we can make about their third-party negotiations from the fact that Steve allegedly took 5 years to negotiate, I think everyone can agree that this popularity is too new to warrant being in Smash. And we don't have any way of knowing whether that would be a standard process across the board, and I'm inclined to think that it wouldn't be. Getting its popularity surge in July just isn't a feasible amount of time for Nintendo to approach Innersloth, work out an agreement, design the character, and put them into the game. So with this obvious lack of viability as a character in Smash, why do people still want to see the game represented? Well, if we look past some of the stupider, more common arguments like cringe or the zombie argument from Hell No Moveset, I think at the very least we can appreciate the impact that the game has had on its players over these last few months, even if the impact on the general gaming scene might be negligible. 2020 has been a hard year for just about everyone on Earth, and needing to stay inside all the time has been emotionally draining on basically every single one of us. Among Us came out at a perfect time for people to be able to drown themselves in gameplay and content and maybe just kind of forget about all the scary things going on this year. The game is probably just a trend, sure, but it's more than that. It's free, it's great to play with friends, and it's an escape. I would have added that it's fun to that list, but for some reason I am awful at this game. Maybe it's due to the fact that I'm widely considered untrustworthy in games like this to my friends and family because I'm usually very vocal and good at lying, but it could also be my strategy of immediately calling an emergency meeting within the first few seconds of the game, and making a hard read by accusing someone immediately as the game begins, before the first task is ever completed, in an effort to get a quick win. Yeah, I'm usually murdered by the imposter right away or thrown out of the ship at the very first meeting, which unfortunately, due to my own actions, is within the first 3 seconds of the game. One time I saw my wife's imposter straight up cut someone in half right there in cold blood in front of me, so I reported the body, but my wife planned for people not to trust me, so I called the meeting and I was like, hey, I just straight up saw her kill someone, and they were like, yeah, you probably can't be trusted, and they killed me anyway. Ugh, I am so bad at games like this, but anyway, is Among Us getting into Smash? No, almost certainly not. The game is too new and it hasn't made a lasting impact, but that shouldn't affect our enjoyment of the game, because at its best, it wasn't really intended to be something that outlives a few years and be immortalized in Super Smash Bros., but rather it's the really cool story of 3 developers who made something simple but inspired and created a game that helped all of us get through some hard times. And I think it's perfectly fine to live right there. I give the chances of Among Us a 0 out of 10. But what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Who should I cover in my next final analysis? Click the video on the left to see something that YouTube handpicked just for you, or click the playlist on the right to binge my entire final analysis series. If you want to see exclusive content, talk to me one-on-one, or get feedback on your own content, consider backing me on Patreon. Also consider coming to talk to me on my Discord. Links are in the description. And until next time, stay smashing.